depending on what level you're targeting. Essentially, the person's sitting and they have to have enough hip flexion that when I bring him forward, I'm flexing the hip, I'm not rounding the back so much. Because as he comes forward, I need his back to drop into extension. Okay? What I say is you're going to cross your arms and you're going to rest your forearm on your forehead, just like that. Okay? I'm going to come in, I'm going to offset my feet. I like to get a little closer than what you're seeing there because I don't want to do this with my arms. I'm going to get exhausted. I want to do this by pulling back, rocking from my front foot to my back foot. Okay? I'm going to snake in here. I'm going to come in like this. I'm going to find a place to place my hands. I'm going to start with the upper thoracic. Okay? Now I get him snuggled up, so now I'm on the picture on the right. I'm on C. Right? So it's right here. His forearms are resting on my chest. Now, the technique is I'm taking my hands, right, so that I can get on, really kind of target the transverse processes or the pillars where the facets are. So I'm a little more medial to the transverse process, so I'm targeting the facet. Right? Bless you. The other thing that I'm doing is, you see how I'm hooking my thumbs here? I'm going to take my hands out. Hooking my thumbs like this because I'm creating an occipital perch. So I'm going to come in here, I create an occipital perch with the back of the posterior part of what would be the thenar, okay? And then my fingers are going down so they can perch on the facet. Right? So he crosses right here, I snuggle in, like this. Now, watch this, I can give him traction, right? You okay there? Right? So obviously if someone has suboccipital tenderness, you're not going to put pressure through that. But I essentially can stabilize his whole neck. You see how he's not extending on his neck? If I didn't do that and I pulled forward because he has the pressure of his forearms on my chest, watch what happens. See him extending? Okay? So you're going to come in here, you're going to perch. I'm essentially supplementing the nuchal ligament, helping to keep his chin in, so that as I rock him forward, okay, let your hips go, good. So he's folding at the hips. Now I come in here and I can get to about that T2, and now I rock back, and now the functional unit that's above does this. See that? Now I'm taking the functional unit and I'm tipping it backwards. So I'm tipping that T2 backwards, and then my fingers are doing a down slide bilaterally. So I bring him forward, I tip, and then I press. See that? Look at all that pressure I can put there. So I'm doing a segmental movement with a down slide. All right, go.
Are you pressing the transverse processes or the spinous processes?
I am in between both. I'm kind of more on like the lamina. So you can go on the transverse process and push on the transverse process and say you're getting to the facet. I'm kind of going right about where the facet is.
So this is more of a pivot?
Well, is it a pivum or a pavum?
If you have pavum, we're on the transverse processes because that's along the joint line. But since you're not on the joint line, you're not getting a joint glide.
That's good. That's really specific. Because I'm using, that's an excellent point. Even if I use a transverse process, I'm trying to go on the joint glide, and I'm doing a joint glide even though I'm going through a transverse process because I can't put my finger on the facet. Okay. So I'm doing a pivum move by rocking it back, and then I'm doing a pavum glide. All right? Even though I'm on TP or I'm on the lamina, this is a combo technique. I'm doing a pivum with a pavum glide. Okay? So that's a great point, because if you're on the transverse process, it's a kind of a relative glide, so where does that fall? But we're going to say, okay, that's a pavum technique.
Okay.
You okay? Okay. Questions? You got it.
There's somebody, so when you're doing this, I feel like the patient really has to trust the physical therapist. How do you turn off the muscles?
Which muscles?
When you're leaning, the extensor muscles. So when you're leaning a patient forward off the chair like that, I feel like you have like a natural defense to kind of extend your back so you don't fall out of the chair.
Sure. When you put your hands on someone's head and you put your hands on someone's neck to work on their neck, they have a natural defense against the hands being on their neck. Trust in your therapist is hugely important, and it's the only way you're going to have an effective technique, so 100%. The other thing is confidence in yourself. When I cross him up, right, he doesn't trust me that much. He knows me a little bit in school, but, guarded against me a little bit. So when I snuggle him up this way, and I say, okay, drop into me, Plum, I have him secure. My hands are confident. Right? I can just say, okay, he's going to relax into it, and he's just relaxing into it so I can get to that technique. Okay? So he has enough trust to allow me to do it. If he was fearful, he had fear avoidance behavior, if we had a lot of psychosocial issues going on here, or if he just didn't feel comfortable with me, there was personality conflict, absolutely. He would not relax and this technique wouldn't work. All right? So your connection with your patient is hugely important. Confidence in yourself so that you have, you're portraying confidence in your hands, and really snuggling him up so he feels secure. If he feels like I'm going to drop him, he won't relax. Okay? But that's with every technique, not just this one.
Okay, can I say one more thing about that? The feet positioning, I don't like it that much. If the feet were more forward, the person won't fall over, right? If you get your feet is tucked back like that, you'll just fall right over. So your back extensions will kick in. So if you throw your feet forward, you're creating a wider base of support, and therefore is less fearful of falling forward.
Yeah. See, and he has, because he's going for lower,
Yeah.
so he has him scooched forward in the chair on the right. And that's because if you come forward, he has to have enough hip flexion to be able to get down that low. Right? So as I'm going to get here, I have to be able to flex him forward. You see what happens with the chair? Okay? If that, I'm just going to let the chair rock. Right? If that happens, forget he's not relaxing. If he feels like he's sliding his butt off the chair, he's not relaxing. So it's a very good point. But if he's all the way back in the chair, gross. I'm trying to get down lower, and I can't get his hips to flex. Well, I can on him. But, all right, let's say when you're doing it, your body is making you have to pull here. Right now, here is not an effective technique. But I adjusted it just because, a feel. I actually pulled him like this. You know what I'm doing? I'm actually pulling him up a little bit, and then he flexes. Now that's an effective technique. So that's why he has him forward in the chair, but you can adjust the technique a little bit. Okay? And then this is another, you can also add a couple of diagonals to this. Watch this. I extend, side bend, rotate. Now what am I doing? Come on, what am I doing?
You're opening one side and closing the other.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really focusing on the downslide of which facet?
Right percent. Left.
Left facet. Right? So I brought him into extension, but I also did a little side bending, did a little rotation. Right there. I want to do the right facet. Extend him a little bit, side bend, rotate.
Is it only for someone who's bigger? You could do it with anyone.
You can do this with anyone. If someone has a very sensitive neck, then you might not be able to do it. The size shouldn't matter a whole lot. I mean, that's with every technique. It's going to vary a little bit depending on your size and their size. But this is because if you get the technique down, you could snuggle them up. You can pretty much do this one on anybody.
How do you go about doing this on the T11, T12, where
You
you
don't.
have to go down? Oh.
Yeah, you can. No, that's just too low. I know it says it there. Okay, I don't do this on T11, T12. But you don't often have to extension mode T11, T12.